So who can tell me from the vocabulary what is a republic?
A state where the people choose the government.
Okay. It's Emily, you got something to add?
It's a state or like a area where the people choose representatives that make the laws that govern them.
Okay, good. So what's an example of a republic?
U.S.
United States, right? Okay. What is a dictatorship?
One person.
Javante.
Somebody that's like the leader of like, or not leader, but somebody like did like the government of the dictator, like I guess.
Help them out, kids.
A leader of a country or a state.
That's what, yeah.
Okay, they're a leader of a country, but how do they lead?
They have all the power.
Good. Okay, in a dictatorship, the dictator is the leader of a country, and they have all the power, right? They have all the say.
Is the United Kingdom or the UK dictatorship?
No, they're not. They're
Russia.
they're a constitutional monarchy, which means they have a king or a queen. They also have a prime minister, and they are bound to follow a constitution. So they have a king or a queen that have power, or a prime minister, but they have to follow along with the constitution. Okay, an example of a
Do
dictatorship
they elect
is
the prime minister?
yes,
But they don't elect the king.
the king and queen, they're royalty, so they're have a bloodline. Like their descendants will be the next king and queen or whatever. But the prime minister they would elect. An example of a dictatorship would be like North Korea. I don't know how familiar you guys are with North Korea, but their leader is Kim Jong Un, and Kim Jong Un is a dictator. Okay.
He looks like a rat.
Hitler is he was
He was a monarch.
you'll learn in high school more about Hitler, but he was what they call a fascist. And a fascist, they're a little different because fascists, they like hate a group. Like a fascist, like Hitler, he hated Jews, right? He wanted to kill Jews.
Every single
But a
one.
dictatorship doesn't necessarily hate anybody particularly. They just have all of the power. They control every aspect of the country. But that makes sense. Yeah, that's kind of the big difference. Okay, what was the Magna Carta? Who can raise their hand and tell me what the Magna Carta was? Okay, Emily.
It was. Read what I wrote.
Okay.
It was a book.
It was the Great Charter, like the Magna Carta, part of the Great Charter, and it was a series of documents that states that all people in the English monarchy were subject to laws.
Very good. Okay, it was a governing document written in England in the early 1200s. Javante, find a seat. In the early 1200s, where it said, like Emily said, everybody, including the king, has to follow the laws. Okay, no one is above the laws. All right, and then the last vocabulary word, English Bill of Rights.
Coach,
Who got that one? Javante.
the power of the monarchy,
Okay, what about the power? of
like
the
it gave the parliament the like, can I say it?
Braden.
It's the English Bill of Rights was like an act.
Constitutional rights,
That like
constitutional
it
and civil rights.
like basically merged two co-leaders into Britain.
Okay. Chris, you have something to add?
It was an act signed into law in 1689 by William III and Mary II.
Okay. Well, what did it do? Emily.
It said that the law, it outlined the rights of the parliament and gave the power, and gave the power over the king.
Okay, it gave the parliament power over the king.
Monarchy.
So,
Okay.
It gave more power than the monarch.
so good. We're trying these two documents, the Magna Carta and the Magna Carta, the English Bill of Rights. They're trying to take power away from who?
The king.
The king, right? We're taking power away from the monarchy and the king and giving more power to who? The people, right? The people are getting more power. So the reason we're talking about this is because James Madison, like in the video we just watched, was influenced by those two things. Influenced by the Magna Carta and influenced by the English Bill of Rights. Hey, make sure if we're on our phones, it's for educational purposes. We're looking up definitions or we're on Schoology. Okay, that's the only reason we should have our phones out.
Schoology wasn't working for her.
Okay. what is, from the video, if you're watching, what was checks and balances? Who can explain to me what checks and balances was, or separation of powers from the video? Okay, Emily.
So the executive, legislature, and judicial branch can all check those powers. Now, remember, there's certain ways that the powers go and how they have to check each other, but every branch can make sure that the other branch doesn't have too much power.
Very good. Okay, so checks and balances is the way that the United States came up with, and James Madison's going to kind of create this idea when he's starting to write the Constitution. Chris, wake up. He's starting to create some of these ideas in the Constitution. That so no, like, one part of our government can become too powerful, right? They're going to take the government first and they cut it directly in half. What are the two halves? Who has power on each half?
The federal and the state.
Very good, okay? They cut it down the middle and they say, okay, this is the federal government, the national government, this is their power. Then over here is the state's power, okay? Then they're going to take the federal government's half and they're going to cut that half into thirds. Okay, what are those thirds? Who can tell me?
Coach.
Yes.
Isn't the state the people?
Okay, the state is like the states, like like Texas and like
Oh.
Virginia, all the states. Okay, so they're going to take the federal government's power and they're going to cut the federal government's power into thirds. And what are those thirds?
Legislative, judicial,
Executive.
And executive. Very good. So they're going to make it 3 branches: legislative, judicial, and executive. Okay, they're going to break up the federal government into 3 branches.
The executive is the
Who
president.
is the head of the executive, Javante?
President.
President. Okay, very good. The president is the head of the executive branch. But like we were talking about when we talk about the election, how much power does the president actually have? Okay, in the grand scheme of things, the whole power of the United States is divided into halves: half the state, half of the national government, the federal government, and then the federal government's broken up into thirds. So they control 1/3 of the federal government. They're the head of the executive branch, right? So in the grand scheme of things, they're talking about in the video, a president or just government in general, they can't make drastic, quick changes to laws, right? If we have a new president or if we keep the same president, they're not going to have a bunch of quick, fast changes, okay? Some people are freaking out saying, oh, if such and such wins the election, if Biden wins the election, if Trump wins the election, the world's going to end, right? And all chaos is going to break loose. But they can't make quick, drastic changes to our laws, and that's intentional, right? They only have control of the executive branch, and in laws, it said, like I was talking about in the video, in D.C., change happens very slowly, and they did that on purpose so that we couldn't have what? One of the vocab words, couldn't have what?
Oh, dictatorship.
A dictatorship, right? Or a tyranny, right? No one leader can have too much power, right? And that was, again, a big fear of having turning into a dictatorship or a monarchy. And what? Why was our initial government really weak? What was our government called? Good, under the Articles of Confederation. It just goes back to that. They were afraid that they would have too much power. So this is their way of saying, we're not under the Articles of Confederation. We're still going to give the federal government some more power. But this is our way of keeping the government from being too powerful, was the separation of powers. Okay?